Hello. Um, Today is actually one of the most awkward timing. So I was supposed to handle something this weekend, but something went way over deadline. So I am doing an emergency session. So this should be maybe less than 2 hours in total. So what I've set out to do is I have a four-cylinder. I have a 2-liter four-cylinder, and I think what I want to do is I want to make a six-cylinder variation of it. The idea behind this is, so this has been in BMP session for some time. This tended to be something closer to a B48. It's making around 270 horsepower and 290. Well, I guess I thought it was 290. Well, I guess it's 293 actually, but it's around that benchmark, 270, 295. It's supposed to be a very, very balanced engine, even if it is actually tuned a little higher than a typical competitor. A typical competitor would have around 250 horsepower, but maybe roughly around the same amount of torque. I think B58, B48 again comes to mind. So what we're going to do here is we're going to transplant this into a six-cylinder, and then we're going to see if we can get something more akin to a B58. So this should be closer to like a 3-liter, making around 390 horsepower. 3-liter, probably a single twin scroll turbo inline six with around 390 horsepower. Think maybe up to 400 pound-feet of torque, but we'll have to see what happens. What I've realized is it's for at least for this type of engine in the current state of the game, it's very difficult to detune an engine. At least via kind of a realistic standpoint, I think you tend to be at the point where you get sometimes there'll be cases where you get a lot more power than you had intended. So we'll have to see. But I think for these engines, they seem perfectly tuned in their normal applications, real life wise and theoretical wise. So I don't see an issue here. So what I've done here is I've taken some note of the quality and technical settings, and then what I'll do is I'll actually, so I have this older build, so I will hijack this build, and then I will just remorph it into what I was looking for. And you can tell it's an older build because in recent updates, a lot of the turbo engines have their parameters changed, I think, especially when it came to this area. So I think what we are going to do is since I can't quite delete this, what theoretically might be the easiest to do is to copy this over and then because these are all used by older builds and these are very outdated by the point. So, but I mean, if I try to delete it, absolutely right. So the SUV, I think two versions of like the M3 or something, VFC, and then like no, yeah, like a 340i kind of thing. So I would just opt to, well, actually, this one is probably not usable. And this one's like a theoretical. This could be dealt with later. So I will clone it again. Also, I probably end up deleting. So the thing it's important because it's very painful sometimes to deal with duplicates, especially name-wise. But usually they're just linked to the cars anyways, so I don't know. It's probably not the worst concern to have. But I do need to get rid of these eventually. Well, actually, because of that, I won't actually do that. So I've actually taken screenshots of the settings, so I think I will actually go ahead and I can probably get away with because I do have all the screenshots, so it'd be more space efficient overall to deal with this. So yeah, we can look through them. Um, yeah. So first of all, the tech pool. 555. Yeah, this should be good. And then you'll unlock it. Make sure that all the dimensions are correct. 91.1, 102.1. It's a 3 liter inline six. No, okay, well I guess this is technically a 4 liter. Some over spec is some over displacement is kind of built into it. But now I think theoretically you're able to actually bore out an engine. Previously you'd have to start from a much larger engine and shrink it, which wasn't always the realistic option actually, and oftentimes would lead to engines that were too heavy. I think it's a aluminum. No, it's not aluminum. It's silicon blend. Uh, Actually, I'll look through that now. Incredible. I think it's a silicate blend, aluminum silicate kind of alloy thing. So aluminum silicate heavy. Yeah, okay. Also, this wasn't supposed to fail, is it? Maybe they made some more updates that changed stuff. It's because this probably should not be happening. I mean, but these don't give any issues. So I think they now added some sort of power density. So power density is kind of like, I don't know if it's something related to like specific power or displacement, power per liter or displacement. But what it has is if an engine is smaller and is making a lot of power, so power dense, it tends to be more stressed out, which is accurate, but definitely it's something we aren't always used to here. And sometimes you can get really low figures for that, which is yeah, kind of concerning for some builds, but I suspect that might be the norm. So first of all, we're gonna check through the dimensions, the displacement of bore and stroke, and then also basic material. So heavy, and then we will look through quality. So this is 3. Door cam 4 valve cylinder, open socket inline 6, 91.1, 102.1. Yeah, seems accurate enough. And then the next one is rotating assembly or bottom end. So 91.1. This is no. This is 82 94.6. So this is a 3 liter forged hyper eutectic for emissions, I think, and then harmonic dampers. I will do this later. This should because these tend to be extremely stressed, so these should be raised. Well, we're raised depending on what kind of time we get. But theoretically, these don't matter too much anymore. All right, so 5. And then, so this is the top end, so this will be the valve train. Compression ratio doesn't matter, but we should still lower it to start it. And we'll lower this quite a bit. 39. Yeah, variable valve timing, lift on everything. This isn't. This shouldn't be a. Should be a balanced engine. 2800. So the variable valve lift activation. So when it switches to cam phase or the cam profile, um, we're tuned at a little lower, but the red line shouldn't actually be that low. Um, but this could be a little awkward because now it's sometimes it's difficult to get good top end power, especially if you're focusing on spool up or low end response. Nope, that's not it. So now we have, so this is a turbocharger electronic control. So not just the twin scroll, I guess. And then, well, I guess it's still twin scroll. Twin scroll is variable geometry is usually something associated with a diesel engine. Um, I think the idea is greater control, but the complexity may not be worth it to an extent. And then we will start using the four-cylinder settings. So we'll just do the compressor and turbine. So I think compressor's the input, turbine's the output. So 37.139. And then I think this should be alright. We can start screwing around with that later. This should be actually 11, so this should be even more. And yep. And then this will be the fueling, so fuel injection. So this is still direct injection, single throttle body, kind of a balanced size. It's running premium, which I guess it's the common one in Europe, which seems accurate enough to increase the emissions optimization, which kind of balance the throttle alongside the emissions, and then we will do that. And then this should be up to 5. All right, and then the exhaust system. Yep, turbo. This shouldn't be too large, too big actually. And then 121. So I think we'll just focus on the engine for this session. Yep. And then yeah, we can. Okay, I'll set the balancing mass down a bit. 8.4. One of the weird things about balancing is balancing mass is pretty easy to choose because it's really difficult to know the actual specifications of their real life counterparts. So it's not uncommon to like really go low, really high, just say target drivability or target response. I think, yeah, so I think this will be alright for now. So first thing I think is sometimes these things take way too much time to try and kind of tune. So, okay, so it sounds like we want to target around 1500 spool. I guess we can sacrifice a bit of that because it is an inline 6 after all. I'm not there is a kind of a meta thing where if you had inline 6 then and you had like a single turbo, then you ram all of the air into a single turbo, which in the game would massively improve the response. Now compared to like a V6, for example, especially you may have, if you have a twin turbo V6, which was also a pretty common layout, which is a pretty common layout among players, you send 3 cylinders into each turbo. which makes them respond way worse. So I think here, oh yeah, you can see you sometimes you think you get there, but then it'll suddenly not quite. Right, so I think you want to focus. Oh, this is also oh yeah. So yeah, you can. It's just by it's very difficult to try and find the right balance, just because you don't actually quite know when the next click will actually function as intended. Yeah. Oh God. 115. So I think what I can do is oh. Hmm. Well, we have to deal with that later, because if we push up to 120, we should be okay. Hmm. Yeah, okay. So, so we want target no more than 1500. Okay, so this is 1400. You can see how really weird things can get. Nope. 415. I could stand to actually. Let me actually look up some specs for a moment. So I should be targeting somewhere from okay 390 to 370. Okay, so that is a lot of torque, but okay, so how much? I know this is considered somewhere between low pressure and somewhere somewhat above a low pressure. So hmm, because I don't mind losing some power. Okay, no, 391. So could stand to lower it a bit. Then and then increase the red line, because we do want the red line to be maybe 7,000. I think is a good benchmark. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but we can screw around accordingly. And then so it should still be above 10. So, and then okay, so this might be a thing for KM tuning. And then all right. Hmm. So this is a little too small then. Okay, should be a good balance, and then okay, so this is a much better one. So you shouldn't push too much into the system. Should be balancing it better. So you want kind of a peak earlier, but still trying to retain as much high end power as possible. So it shouldn't suddenly drop off after, say, I don't know, 5500 or something. Should be able to keep going. And then we can probably screw around with, say, increase it again. Yeah, this is gonna be a back and forth kind of situation. With okay, screw around with the boost pressure, screw around with the compressor size, the turbine size. It's you do that pretty common, if anything. Simply does seem to be much closer to what we're looking for, though. Probably okay, so probably does not hurt. Once we get that, not quite. All right. Okay, so okay, nope. No, this is okay. This is a little difficult than I expected. Okay, because was it 1500? This is definitely the response we're looking for, but can we push the peak a little lower? Probably wouldn't matter as much if the red line is higher, but I think we want to stick to just 7,000 for the red line. I think that's a good balance. Yeah, it's a little weak in this 5,000, 6,000 area. It should be able to hit around 370 at 5,000, but this is what, 360? So 5500 is making around 370, which I guess is alright. 55,000 is making around 360. And so reference point is 375 at 5200 or 380 at 5000. Yeah, you can tell. And even worse is some of these references are notoriously known for um, being heavily underrated. So a minor inconvenience. But we can work around that. We just want something that's delivering good, consistent power across the range. Mm, okay, so this. So you might have starved the engine a bit. Okay, footage on. For 100. Okay, so that should be a good balance to get. So so idea is we want to push down the peak outputs as low as possible while retaining a consistently high output across the whole range. And then I think, okay, so then we can screw around with, say, something like balancing mass. And then this is pretty high response, maybe. So we could maybe sacrifice a bit of that. Well, the problem is really difficult to know how much is too much. So originally had it around 8. I don't necessarily want crossing 50. I will leave it. Hmm. Okay, we can maybe we can deal with that later. And then for the emissions optimization is like, okay, no, this should be a good amount. And then so 1,700. Yeah, okay, too little power. Probably still want around the 390 horsepower range. And then precat, yeah, that's needed, I think. So theoretically, I think the best way to say is boost this one, but that will go to 120, over 120. But I think here we had 110. If I must, okay, if I go further, no, I probably won't get away with that. So I might get away with going up to 125, perhaps. Okay. Well, alright, this is awkward. No, 8.7. Yeah, okay, so better to put into fuel system. Get away with pushing that up a bit. Okay, not so much now. 7. This is a seems to be a pretty good balance. Alright, so 390, 400 pound-feet of torque. And then so reference. So I think that should work fine. So reference point 7,000 red line, 382 at 5,000 to 6,000. Is still a little weak on that. And then 369 at 1600. So we have a lot more low end torque, but not quite as much high end power. At least mid range power, rather. I think we still have the upper end at the limit. And then, so yeah, so the reason I'm making this is we have, okay, well actually, look, so if I look at the reference point, and I have, so let's say, well, okay, this probably needs a, no, this is the S version, so no, that's going to be a little different. Yeah, these are going to be all different. And then, so the idea is so this 390 horsepower version is supposed to be the standard fit. So I have two options here. So if I do a 6-cylinder variant of this compact executive, this, and I'll need to make additional version with maybe around 60 more, 50 more horsepower. And then, but for something like an SUV, this can get away with just 390. It'll be adequate for like a normal variant. So if anyone's watching, maybe you could chime in a bit and say which one you want me to start handling. Keep in mind that planning for the next BMP session, which could be, well, it could be this week, but I know I might be in a bit of a crunch for the next 3 weeks. So we'll have to see how the schedule lines up. So I would at least like to have something new. So I would say that previous variations did have around 445 horsepower. So what I'll do first is so what is using this one? C42S. Okay, so this one had 420 horsepower. Well, that was an even older build. Mod interior test, yeah, whatever. 45 SCX2 first. Okay, so interior. Okay, so this one was there to say, because now we have mechanism of transferring fixtures over from one build to another, but it's all or nothing. So sometimes I don't like to keep having to do interior stuff. So what I've sometimes done is I'll have this without any external fixture, all internal. And then I will just transfer it over into a new build. And then, so this one, this doesn't need an engine. But I can get away with, this can get away with this one. And this was the previous board variant. It also should be quicker, but anyways. And then, not this one. Okay, this is the minivan. Nope, and then the F. Nope, this is a different tune. So the FM, this one needs a new engine, so I'll go ahead and swap it in so I can do some more editing. And I would actually kind of like to remake this because this one is very haphazardly done, so it doesn't quite look right. I think it's puffing out in too many directions, so this isn't quite working. Oh, I know. So there's a competition going on, and the theme is on mid-size to large sport SUVs. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I have this thing, but then I realized this is like a close to like compact. And so when I look at the wheelbase, where's the design? Okay, so you look here, wheelbase of this thing is 2.8. That is clearly way too small because most mid-sized SUV or cars in general, they start around 3-meter wheelbase. So as much as I would like to use this, don't think this is actually going to work. Because if I look, the current 3 Series is around 2.85-meter wheelbase. And then the previous X3, because the new one just came out, that would be 2. Also, it's slightly longer. Actually, it's 2.86. So not very suitable And then if I do an X5, so if I do the current X5, the wheelbase is 3, slightly lower, smaller than 3-meter wheelbase. Um, Not only that, I would still need to up-tune the engine. We can get because I really do want to work on a sedan, but the competition is calling for SUV. So I think what I'm doing now is I will make a sport variant, and this is not going to be the full, I don't know, let's say M variant, for example. This will be more of one of the M Sport variants. So, oh, I can't delete it. What's this? C42 VMAX. Oh, okay. That's. Oh, this was the theoretical entry level build. I don't think this is actually gonna go anywhere anytime soon, but it would definitely still be good for larger counterpart. Because this actually was in one of the first BMP sessions we did 3 years ago. So this is at like a three plus euro build. Also held up surprisingly well actually for what it is. So you can see here that this has a slightly smaller than 3-meter wheelbase. So this is definitely a size we are kind of wanting, but in SUV form. So we'll just slap in this engine. All right. So we'll get rid of this, and then we can start tuning it. This would be S4R1. S4R1. Oh, not diesel. Nope, please. Alright, so historically, I know the main change is I've made it run richer, but okay, this is way too rich actually. They definitely tend to run richer, so let me look at an older build. No. Also not. Okay, 322. So this is an older build, even older build. And this is still, okay, this is still running the old one. I think we were at the point where we didn't actually like, we didn't, the performance is so good that we don't actually have to specifically run a richer fuel mapping for the performance stuff. Nope. So actually, let's see what this has. So this one is also running pretty rich for what it. Nope. Okay, so I should still stick to 30 for the time being. So this should be 1. I don't know why I put 2 there. So here, this will be difficult to know what we'll use because lore has changed quite a bit, I would say. And this is going to be way too loud. Which is... I also say the full performance variant would have twin turbo. So we could say do full variant, then we can screw around later. This probably shouldn't be variable though. Directly we should have a twin scroll option for this thing actually. But I guess it's just not an option because I guess this is more of like um I I I actually don't know what type of twin turbo this is because this does not look like a sequential. This looks more like a parallel setup. So you have 2 smaller turbos of the same size. And the combined system should spool up faster than one larger turbo while making around the same power. For this one, we should be targeting around 550, which will actually be pretty difficult because now we're at the point where not only we want higher redline, we need to really stop upping the boost level. But at least in this sort of high performance application, some slight delays, okay, acceptable, I think. So we can get away with some bit. So maybe yeah, it's actually gonna be pretty difficult to deal with. We can take the reliability hit. Yeah, I guess this is a new enough engine to. I guess this was simulated to Inscroll. This one should have a lower compression ratio because it is taking in more boost. I still think the redline should be raised. And then theoretically, we can actually get away with forged layout. We should uncork this thing a little more. So we can toss the fuel economy into a bin somewhat. It definitely should be louder. It definitely should be much louder than 30, so you can get away with that probably. Yeah, I think this still needs work on the turbo tuning. So all of them, okay, so all three references are spoiling at around 2600, or at least, or have max torque around there. Actually, I don't know. They also have far more consistency across the range. I think we can deal with this. This should be alright to deal with as long as we dip below 2000. It should be alright. Okay. How much? How much is PS? 2 horsepower? It's around 540. This should be an alright benchmark. Actually, we may want to actually decrease this. Alright. Wow, look at the... this does not look right for exhaust. But I don't know if anything actually gets changed. Oh, it does. Oh. Oh, I think this, okay, this thing's just large. Alright then. That definitely does not look right. But then again, a lot of things here also don't look right in general. So I could maybe get straight through. Not sure. Well, hmm. So what I'll do now is I have this. So okay, so this still should have a version that's making more power. Even slightly. Yeah, a lot of them are having... Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So wait, what's the... So this should not go below 108.7. Yeah, I think this will suffice for now. Alright, so this will be something that can be fit into, say, here, like a base level SUV. Um, so focus more on the spool, maybe focus more on the torque, but I'm not sure how well that actually worked. But while we don't need as much high-end power, so it makes it a lower RPM, and you may not. So that will be more appreciable, I think. For some reason, it's actually less reliable. I think there's a game mechanic moment. So actually, I'll go ahead and bump up because these will go in like heavier cars. I'll bump this up a bit. So, so I feel you may actually not get much better than this though. All right, so now we're due now is we'll actually start with the sedan first. So all right, so previously I said this had. So I'll see what the performance is like with the 390 horsepower engine, and then see if I can justify trying to bump it to 450 like it would have been previously. So 4.8. So if I look at the specification, so if 340i is the reference, this could be a little tricky to hit because B58 is known for being extremely underrated. So the amount of power that's quoted at the crankshaft, we might actually be making that at the wheels. So targeting around, oh, please. Yeah, we are a second off the time. And then if we look at the quarter mile, we are also around half a second off for the quarter mile. So this, we'll have to see. A lot of it, though, can be explained by transmission tuning. So there should be a, they should be able to source that, at least the gear ratios, and then start off from that. Sorry, also one thing to note, this is supposed to be all-wheel drive. This is supposed to be close to that. Furthermore, it should also receive larger tires or wider tires. There's also a fair chance that if I run through the quality sliders a few more times, I could free freeze some more performance, I think. Oh, that's the. Oh, it doesn't mean information, doesn't it? No. I think this had 19s, I think. Okay, so still the 8 speed, and then we're used. Nope, 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 please don't do that. We will stick with these ratios. So, but I think 6 gear should probably remain 1. So, interestingly enough, okay, that works. And then, oh, these seem a lot closer spec than I expected. Okay, which is interesting to say the least. Yeah, yeah, I think we're like 0.1 off or something. Actually, kind of surprised. I will say though that I think a lot of the really quick times the 340i is achieving is primarily based on kind of I think the idea of break kind of launching. So it's very fast if you can manage to build up the turbo boost and then launch it with full power. Take advantage of the all-wheel drive and shorter gearing, whatever. But if you're just going from a stoplight, your engine could be caught off guard. So this is why sometimes you'll see a spec called 5 to 60. So instead of 0 to 60, which allows for actual launching, 5 to 60 requires a slight rollaway, which is meant to better simulate a kind of a real world situation. Furthermore, there's also other specs like passing speed, where because if you're on a highway, you aren't using your 0 to 60, you're using something like 40 to 70 or something. That time is far more important for entering highway and passing. So things can get pretty arbitrary when you're only focusing on acceleration from a standstill. Oh, right, the final drive on this is actually also not all that much different. So this will serve as a good benchmark. So now we're maybe half a second off instead of 1 second off, which is far better. And then we can experiment with things like quality and tires and see what we get from there. This definitely needs wider tires. So let me check what specs they would have. Hmm. Bill. Okay, so that is 19. These are 19s. So I was here, but I don't think these have staggered somewhere around flat. 19, 19, 19, 19. Alright, so these are 19s. Okay, so none of them have above a 19, which makes sense. No, okay, it's not being too clear on what. No, okay. Okay, kind of want to see if 3, and then come on. No, not the M3. Okay, so official times are 4.1 seconds, at least from when I look at the manufacturer website. So we have staggered summer, and then so is there a summary? Hmm. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be. Okay. So, so I will just do wider tires overall. Unfortunately, it seems like I am stuck. So, and theoretically, this was actually already the sport package. I don't know if it makes sense to widen the fenders for this. Because ideally, I would be able to go higher, but I didn't actually pull out the fenders. 255s. So we can stick with the current size for now. And this should be something like blue. So this will be the same options as kind of the four-cylinder version, except more powerful engine and all-wheel drive. Everything else should actually largely be the same. Um, so once we get the tuning done, and then I think we will probably end this because I have things to prepare for tomorrow. Yeah, this is not supposed to run very long. So yeah, sometimes the chassis tuning or trim tuning, transmission tuning is kind of painful because you'll just be doing a lot of clicking and looking like this. Usually, if you depend on the person, the fun part will either be in the engine or it'll be with the actual design itself. But I've already kind of did the design, so this that will largely need a more of a refresh. So I'll need to figure out how to distinguish this from kind of the four-cylinder sport variant. Because especially now that the four-cylinder now gets exhaust shrouds, this could be slightly more complicated to differentiate. All right, and then I think this just can be puffed out slightly. We can adjust that back if we need with more advanced fixture settings. And then brakes, they might have to be upsized. I know one concern I had was these pistons. It's very difficult to know how many pistons are actually good. Because even more mundane cars might have, say, 4 or 6 pistons, especially if it's kind of a sport variant. But usually in the rear, it's usually 1 for most normal, and even some of the sportier options. Nope, nope, don't go below that actually. And for the arrow, okay, don't know why okay, that's weird. I have a lower value. Yeah, no, I did this for a reason, I think. Because I did want less lift in the rear. Okay, no, it's not going to work actually. So, can get away with this. Can I get away with lower cooling? Nope. And then weight distribution is going to be pretty painful. This is kind of, how much is it? 51? Okay, that's lower than I expected. So might be able to get away with a higher cost. But maybe up to maybe 5,000 or something. Not too much. Hmm. Okay. So I might as well see is I'll often have to tune the weight as rear as possible, which sometimes does complicate a lot of the tuning. Hmm. Wow, okay. Interesting. I get the feeling that the front camera shouldn't overtake the rear. And, and then toe, okay, so could use some rear maybe? I think the tuning is largely gonna stay the same actually, if anything. I think that's alright. Yeah, I think that's a okay trade-off. And then so I will save this build. Okay, it's already 10, so I should actually maybe get ready for tomorrow. I have some class tomorrow, for example. So I suspect that this week is going to be fairly busy. So I'll get you that as soon as I can. So, well, what the hell is up the front caliper actually? Did they change it? Weird. Oh, okay, now fixed. Okay. So so I'm gonna keep developing this when I have time for the next BMP session. So this should be a good counterpart to the four-cylinder version that's been performing extremely well in BMP sessions. So this should just be the six-cylinder higher performing counterpart. So yeah, we'll keep working on this. The general mechanicals should be done. 8-speed automatic, all-wheel drive, a 390 horsepower, turbocharged inline 6. Performance seems to be around there for the most part. So we will focus more on differentiating the design, especially on the front, the rear. Obviously, the badging is going to be changed. So yeah, I think it's time for me to rate out. Yeah, thank you everyone for coming to this short session. Hope you enjoyed it. And this is something I've been wanting to do for a while, so I'll just so likely instead of BMP this week, we will likely be further working on this build, and it may be moved later in the weekend, so maybe moved to say Sunday instead of Friday or Saturday, because I know I have a big paper, research paper to kind of finish drafting. I've been drafting on and off for a while, and then I have another 2 sets of homework to deal with, and then I have some interviews and also some applications to fill out anyways, so they go hand in hand. We'll rate out one of my favorites. I guess everyone seems to be on, which is interesting. So let me get this ready. Oh, please. Hmm. So, mute, mute. Let me get this ready. Okay, this is taking forever to load, as always. Well, all right. Thank you everyone for coming. So yeah, I'll hope to see you this weekend. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Maybe, please move this up, and then